Dumbarton F.C. season. The season was the 19th Scottish football season in which Dumbarton competed at a national level, entering the Scottish Football League and the Scottish Cup. In addition, Dumbarton played in the Dumbartonshire Cup, the Glasgow Charity Cup and the Greenock and District Charity Cup. Story of the season. Dumbarton entered season 1891-92 as the defending league champions, with an almost unchanged side. The battle between professionalism and amateurism in football still raged, but for now playing for the love of the game still won in Scotland. August. The season opened on 8 August with a trip to the Borders, where a friendly 3-3 draw was played against 5th KRV. A further pre-season friendly was played 4 days later at Adria 2-0, reverse being suffered. The league campaign opened on 15 August with an away fixture against Cambuslang. The team turned out as follows: MacLeod goal, Watson and Macmillan full-backs, Lang, Boyle and Kerr half-backs, Taylor, W. Bell, J. Miller, Thompson and J. Bell forwards. Taylor was the first to score for the Suns after 20 minutes and Thompson followed before the interval. The second half was evenly contested and the game finished 2-0. A week later, the unfurling of the joint league champions flag was celebrated at Bochard, where Abercorn were the visitors on league duty. The places of Watson, Lang and W. Bell were taken by E. Miller, John Gillan and McNaught respectively. Bell netted his first goal of the season in 5 minutes and 3 more followed by half-time, with Abercorn missing a penalty. In the second half it was more of the same, with the final score being 8-1. On 29 August the two unbeaten sides in the league so far met, as Hearts took on Dumbarton at Tynecastle. A full-strength side took to the field as Watson and Galbraith returned to the side. The Suns got off to a good start and an early goal was ruled out for offside. Hearts then came more into the game and scored first, though Dumbarton equalised from an own goal before half-time. Early in the second half the visitors scored again, but the referee did not see the ball cross the line. Luck wasn't with the Suns and Hearts took advantage with a quick brace, the second being a Miller own goal, leaving the final score at 3-1. The result left Hearts on top of the table, with Dumbarton and Celtic leading the chase 2 points behind. September. On 5 September, Dumbarton travelled to Ibrox to play last season's joint champions Rangers in a league fixture. Only one change was made, with Thompson coming back in place of Galbraith. The Suns were ahead within 10 minutes from a Taylor goal, and just a minute later the same player made it too, with the hat-trick being completed after 15 minutes. Rangers were a disappointing lot, and it wasn't till late on that they scored a consolation goal, leaving the result at 3-1. A week later Leith Athletic were visitors to Bochard in their league encounter. Miller failed to appear and was replaced by MacDonald, with Galbraith coming in for Macmillan. Taylor continued his recent goal-scoring form by having the Suns too. The other Dumbarton forwards decided to join in the second half, with Miller, McNaught and Bell completing a 6-0 thrashing. Hearts, the early league pace-setters, played their return league fixture against Dumbarton at Bochard on 19 September. Miller and Thompson returned to the side. The Suns were quickest off the mark and McNaught had the home side ahead within 9 minutes. Miller and Bell made it 3 before 15 minutes had passed. Bell then scored again before Hearts got one back for 1 after 20 minutes. Understandably, the pace of the game dropped and there were no more goals before the interval. Watson had been injured in the first half and had retired for a time, and although he returned in the second half he was clearly unfit. Nevertheless, it was not until 2 minutes from the final whistle that Miller scored the last goal of the game for a 5-1 thumping. On 26 September Dumbarton were at Celtic Park to play off a league fixture. Watson had not recovered from his injury and was replaced by MacDonald. Both teams played a fast and exciting game, and despite chances falling to both, the interval was reached goalless. It only took 5 minutes, however, for Celtic to take the lead in the second half, and while the Suns had numerous attempts at equalising, they came to nothing, and in the end the Celts scored a second just on full time being called. So the end of September still saw Hearts in the lead with 13 points. 3 points ahead of the chasing pack of Celtic, Dumbarton and Leith Athletic. October. At the beginning of the season, a Canadian international touring side played a series of matches in the UK. One of these was against the Scotland XI on 3 October at Ibrox Park. John McLeod and John Bell played in the 5-1 win for the Scots, with Bell scoring 2 of the goals. On the same day, Dumbarton visited county neighbours, Volley of Leven, on league business. In addition to the missing personnel from the representative match, Taylor's place was taken by a trialist. A goal from Miller after 40 minutes was all that separated the teams at half-time. A penalty brought Volley level, but an own goal shortly before the end provided the Suns with a 2-1 win. A free week was followed on 17 October with a home league fixture against third Greenock. McLeod returned to the team, but Watson and Bell were absent. Nevertheless, the weakened team played well, and goals in each half by Miller were enough for a 2-0 victory. Street Mirren were the next visitors to Boghead on 24 October, where an unchanged side was fielded by Dumbarton. Taylor and Miller, his 4th goal in 3 games, had the Suns 2 ahead by the interval. In the second half, Taylor scored again before the Saints got one back. A converted penalty kick by Macmillan made it 4 before a late Street Mirren flurry saw the final score being 4-2. On the last day of the month, the Suns travelled to Edinburgh to play the return league fixture against Leith Athletic. Bell returned, but Taylor and Miller were missing from the team. Bell wasted no time in adding to his goal tally by scoring Dumbarton's first in 10 minutes. This was the position until Leith evened up matters midway through the second half, but a Macmillan strike and an own goal made the points safe for the Suns in a 3-1 win. At the end of the month, with another 4 victories secured, Dumbarton were still in second place with 18 points from 11 games, a point behind Hearts but crucially 2 games in hand. November. The month began with a visit to county neighbours Renton for a league fixture on 7 November. Taylor returned, but Galbraith dropped out. Thompson and Macmillan had the Suns 2 ahead after 35 minutes, but Renton got one back before half-time. An equaliser was scored midway through the second half, but Taylor notched the winner for Dumbarton and another 2 points added to the total. On 14 November, Clyde were visitors to Boghead. Miller returned at centre-forward in an otherwise unchanged side. In what became a fairly one-sided match, both Bell and Taylor scored hat-tricks in an 8-2 thrashing. The match against Street Mirren on 21 November was postponed as Dumbarton were unable to raise a team due to illness and second XI commitments. A week later there was a rest from league duty and with the first Scottish Cup encounter. Much on the prompting of Dumbarton officials, a qualifying process had been introduced to the Cup competition, and Dumbarton's first appearance was at the 5th round stage. Glasgow Thistle were the opponents at Boghead. McLeod and Richmond were unavailable, their places taken by Barr and Smith from the seconds. Thistle held their own until half-time, but then goals from Taylor, Bell and Miller carried the Suns through to the next round. At the end of November, the positions in the league saw Hearts lead with 21 points from 14 matches, Dumbarton a point behind but with just 12 games, and Celtic in third with 16 points from just 9 games. December began with a league visit to Carfkin Park to play third Lanark, with Dumbarton fielding an unchanged side. Thirds started brightly and were 2 ahead early on and had another disallowed for offside. However, 2 goals from Bell brought the teams level before the break. Early in the second half, a thirds man had to retire injured and the Suns took full advantage of the extra man, with Bell completing his hat-trick, then McNaught and Thompson completing a 5-2 victory. On 12 December, the league fixture against local rivals Volley of Leven was played at Boghead. Watson was a welcome returnee to the team while MacDonald took the place of Keir. Conditions were miserable, but Dumbarton played much the better. Taylor scored within seconds of the game starting, then Miller, Thompson and MacDonald had the home team 4 ahead by half-time. Another 4 goals had Dumbarton 8-0 in front with 20 minutes of the second half played, and with the weather worsening, the Volley captain intimated to the referee that the Volley team surrendered the game to the homesters. A week later it was back to Calfkin Park, but this time on Scottish Cup duty. McLeod and Keir returned to the squad. As in the previous game between the sides, thirds were first to show and were a goal ahead after 20 minutes, but McNaught got the Suns back on level terms just on half-time. Luck once again deserted thirds as one of their players retired injured, and Taylor scored twice to take full advantage of the extra man. Late in the game, Bell had to leave the field after being charged by a thirds man. The 26th December saw near neighbours Renton come to Boghead on league duty. Keir was missing from the previous week's team. The game began in atrocious conditions, but McNaught had the Suns ahead within 10 minutes. Renton got their equaliser from a scrimmage, but before half-time Bell made the score to 1 before half-time. Despite efforts from both teams, there were no further goals. The league positions at the end of the year looked good for Dumbarton, now ahead with 28 points, 5 ahead of Hearts, but Celtic still posed a real danger, 10 points behind but with 6 games in hand. January. The new year began with a visit to Celtic Park in a friendly. Lang replaced Keir in the team, with Richmond coming back in place of Smith. A close contest was expected, but from the minute that Taylor had the Suns ahead early on, it was one-way traffic. Bell, Taylor again, and Thompson made it 5-0 by half-time. In the second half it was more of the same, with Bell getting his second, then McNaught, and finally Taylor completing his hat-trick for an 8-0 walloping. A day later, Dumbarton met Hearts in a friendly at Tynecastle. The only change to the team was the resting of Taylor. In a complete reversal of roles, it was the Edinburgh side who dominated proceedings, taking a 5-0 lead by the interval. Thompson saved the Suns' blushes with a consolation goal in the second half, but Hearts increased their tally by 2 for a 7-1 trouncing. Then on 4 January, Dumbarton made the trip up north to face Aberdeen. McLeod and Miller were rested, but despite the missing first XI men, Dumbarton came away with a fine 6-1 win. Bad weather ensured that little football would be played for most of the month, until 23 January when old rivals Queen's Park came to Boghead for a 7th round Scottish Cup tie. Dumbarton were back to full strength with the return of McLeod, Keir, Taylor and both Millers. Queens opened the scoring after 15 minutes and were 2 up just before half-time. On crossing over, the Suns pressed and were rewarded by goals from Boyle, then Taylor to claim a 2-2 draw. A week later at Hampden, in front of 15,000 spectators, the replay took place. Dick Hunter of Street Meeran took Watson's place at full-back. Both sides had chances in the first half, but neither team could find the net. However, within 5 minutes of the restart, Queens were ahead and 3 more followed before Taylor scored a consolation goal 13 minutes from time. February. Bad winter weather put paid to any play by Dumbarton during February. So the positions in the league at the end of the month were unchanged, other than Celtic closing the gap in third, now 6 points behind with 4 games in hand. March. A series of international trial matches were held on 5 March to consider selection of teams to represent Scotland in the upcoming home international championship. John McLeod, Tom McMillan, Dickie Boyle, John Taylor, John Bell and Willie Thompson all took part. On 12 March, Dumbarton played their first match in 6 weeks with a semi-final tie in the County Cup at home against Methven Park. A number of second XI players were given starts, but the long layoff did not seem to have done the Suns forwards much harm as they raced to a 4-0 lead by half-time. In the second half, McLeod, who was taking a rare opportunity to show his outfield skills, joined in the scoring melee with a brace, and in the end the game ended in a 9-0 rout. A week later, Dumbarton returned to league duty with a visit to Paisley to play Street Meeran. Watson and Taylor were missing, their places taken by Smith and Sindua. Bell had the Suns to ahead, but the Saints got one back before the break. An own goal restored the visitors to goal advantage before the Buddies got another, but it was not enough as Dumbarton ran out 3-2 winners. On 26 March, John Taylor and William Thompson both earned their first caps for Scotland against Wales, with Thompson scoring a goal in the 6-1 win. At the same time, Dumbarton entertained Cambuslang in the league at Boghead. In addition to the internationals, the Suns were also minus Macmillan, who had decided to retire from the game, and Keir. Bell and Miller put the Suns ahead early, but Cambuslang came back to equalise before half-time. McLeod, making up for the missing forwards, put Dumbarton ahead again. Another from McLeod and one from Miller made the final score 5-2. So having chalked up further 2 league victories, at the end of March Dumbarton led the table with 32 points with 4 games left to play, still 5 ahead of Hearts in second, but more threateningly Celtic in third, 9 points behind and with 5 games in hand. April. On to April. John Bell earned his second cap against England, and John McLeod earned his 4th cap in the same game, with Bell scoring Scotland's goal in the 4-1 defeat. A week later Rangers came to Boghead on league business. Unfortunately, the referee from Dundee failed to appear and both teams agreed to a Dumbarton official taking his place. Goals from Boyle, Taylor and Bell gave the Suns a 4-1 victory, but immediately after the game Rangers protested the result. Rangers' reason for the protest was that Dumbarton had taken men down too far, and that it would be an extremely nice thing if they could get another chance to show their paces. The protest was subsequently upheld, even though it was the Rangers secretary who had suggested that the Dumbarton referee officiate. However, the league censured Rangers for unsportsmanlike behaviour. On 11 April, teams representing the Scottish and English leagues met at Bolton. John McLeod, Jack Bell, Dickie Boyle and John Taylor all played in the 2-2 draw, in which Bell scored one of the goals. The following weekend Dumbarton met Volley of Lebanon in the Dumbartonshire Cup final at Boghead. A full-strength team turned out. Miller had Dumbarton ahead midway through the first half, and another goal gained through a scrimmage made the half-time score 2-0. There were no further goals, and Dumbarton retained the trophy for the 4th successive year. In a huge game which would go a long way to deciding the destination of the league title, Celtic visited Dumbarton on 23 April. MacDonald was the only change to the side, replacing Stewart. A fast and furious game saw no goals by half-time, but just as it looked as if the game would end in a scoreless draw, Miller stepped up to grab the all-important goal to provide Dumbarton with a 1-0 win. Having taken the massive step of beating their closest challengers, on 30 April Dumbarton travelled to meet Clyde in Glasgow with an unchanged side. In less than a minute Bell had the Suns ahead, but it was not to be the easy victory that might have been predicted, as Clyde came back with their best performance of the season to record a 4-1 result. So April ended with Dumbarton still ahead with 34 points, with 2 games left to play. Hearts had the same number of points but only had 1 remaining game, whilst Celtic were on 28 points with 4 games left. May. On 4 May the rerun of the protested match against Rangers was played at Boghead. An unchanged side apart from Galbraith taking Taylor's place turned out determined to show that the first game's result had been no fluke. A Bell hat-trick contributed towards a 6-0 thrashing, not counting another 2 goals that were disallowed. This victory ensured a 100% home league record. 3 days later, Dumbarton went into their final league game knowing that a draw at Abercorn would be sufficient to win the title outright. Taylor was back in his place for the match, and while the Abbeys led at half-time, a Thompson goal made the score 1-1, and this is how it finished. Dumbarton champions again. On 14 May Dumbarton fielded their second XI to begin their defence of the Greenock Charity Cup against Dyke at Capello. The Suns had the greater share of the play and ran out 1-0 winners. The following weekend Dumbarton turned out at Ibrox to play Celtic in the semi-final of the Glasgow Charity Cup. Dick Hunter of Street Mirren guested for the Suns. With a strong wind in their favour, Dumbarton bossed the first half, although it was not until late in the first half that Miller scored the opener. In the second half, however, the Celts took full advantage of the elements and would gain some revenge for losing the league title by recording a 3-1 win. The final game of the season took place on 28 May, with the final of the Greenock Charity Cup against Morton at Capello. Again, a scratch side was played with only MacLeod and Galbraith of the full team present, and a strong Morton side recorded a 4-1 victory. It was however not the final game for one of the Dumbarton players, as on 30 May, a Scottish League XI played a Scottish Alliance XI, with John Miller being selected to play in the lead team, scoring twice in the 4-3 win. On the same day, Dumbarton Rangers won the County Second XI Cup with a 6-3 win over Smithston Hibs. With this win, the reserves matched the big team by winning a fourth successive county championship. Dumbartonshire Cup. Dumbartonshire Cup. Glasgow Merchants Charity Cup. Glasgow Charity Cup. Glasgow Charity Cup. Player statistics. Jack Bell retained his top league top scorer title for second season in succession, scoring 19 goals. Source: Reserve Team. Dumbarton reached the semi-final of the Scottish Second XI Cup before losing out to Anbank in a replay, but won their fourth successive Dumbartonshire Second XI Cup with a win over Smithston Hibs in the final.